Welcome to the Fate Spun channel, a place where every story will make you feel, wonder, and hold your breath. Are you ready? Then go ahead. Story number 1. The coffee shop that wasn't there. I've been lurking on this subreddit for years, but I never thought I'd have something to share. That changed last week. I can't stop replaying the moment in my head, trying to make sense of it. But no matter how many angles I approach it from, it doesn't add up. Here's what happened. I was on my way to a meeting downtown, running slightly ahead of schedule for once. I decided to treat myself to a coffee and stepped into this little cafe I'd never noticed before. It had a charming retro vibe, checkered floors, a jukebox playing soft 60s tunes, and a few patrons quietly sipping their drinks. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and something sweet, like cinnamon rolls. The barista, a middle-aged woman with short gray hair and a warm smile, greeted me as I walked in. Her name tag said Margie. I ordered a cappuccino, and as I waited, we chatted a bit. She told me the cafe had been family-owned for decades, and I remember thinking how odd it was that I'd never seen it before. I live only a few blocks away. When my coffee was ready, I took a sip, and it was hands down the best cappuccino I'd ever had. I even told Margie that, and she laughed, saying, "It's the love we put into it." I left a generous tip and made a mental note to come back soon. After my meeting, I decided to swing by again and grab another cup. When I got to the spot, though, the cafe was gone. I mean, gone. In its place was a boarded-up storefront with graffiti all over it. Confused, I thought maybe I had the wrong street. I walked up and down the block twice, checking every building, but it was the right place. Feeling unsettled, I asked a guy working at the convenience store nearby if he knew what happened to the cafe. He gave me a puzzled look and said, "That place has been closed for years. The owner passed away and no one took over." I didn't know what to say. I could still taste the cappuccino, and I even had the receipt in my pocket. When I pulled it out, though, the paper was blank. Just a plain slip of white paper. I've been back to that block every day since, hoping to find some logical explanation, but the cafe isn't there, and no one seems to remember it. It's like it just blinked out of existence, leaving me with nothing but a memory and a nagging question. Was it real? Or did I step into some kind of parallel universe for 15 minutes? If anyone has experienced something similar, please let me know. Because right now, I feel like I'm losing my grip on reality. Story number 2. The duplicate train ride. Last week, something happened to me that I can't explain. I've been trying to rationalize it, but the more I think about it, the more it feels like I slipped into another version of reality, just for a moment. Here's what went down. I take the same train to work every morning. I board at 7:15 a.m., grab a window seat, and zone out for the 25-minute ride. It's always the same routine, and I see the same faces day after day. You know how it is. Even if you don't talk to them, you start recognizing the regulars. That morning felt completely normal at first. I boarded the train, found my usual spot, and noticed the woman with the bright red scarf sitting across from me like she always does. There was the guy in the corner scrolling on his phone, and the older man reading his newspaper. Same crowd, same train. Except about halfway through the ride, I noticed something strange. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a man boarding the train. That wouldn't be odd, except the train was already moving and we hadn't stopped at a station. He just stepped on, as if the train had somehow opened its doors in the middle of the track. He looked completely ordinary, a middle-aged guy in a gray suit carrying a leather briefcase. But the second he sat down, I felt a chill. Something about him felt wrong, though I couldn't put my finger on it. He sat directly across from me, staring straight ahead, but there was something unnatural about his stillness. Then, as I glanced around the train, I froze. The red scarf woman was still there, but now there was another version of her, sitting 2 rows down. Same scarf, same coat, same bag. She was even holding the same book, and she wasn't the only duplicate. The older man with the newspaper? There were 2 of him too, sitting side by side, turning the same page at the same time. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, but then the train lights flickered, and for a split second, everything around me doubled. Two trains, two sets of people. It was like I was seeing a mirror version of the world, layered on top of mine. When the lights came back on, the duplicates were gone, including the strange man in the gray suit. I looked around and everything seemed back to normal. But here's the kicker. When we pulled into the station, the announcement said we were arriving at Westville, a station I'd never heard of. I checked the signs and sure enough, it said Westville everywhere. It wasn't until I stepped off the train and blinked that everything shifted back. The signs now said my usual station name and everything looked familiar again. I know this sounds insane, but it happened. I can't shake the feeling that I was on two trains at once. One in my world and one in wherever that other place was. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Or am I just losing my mind? Story number 3, the house that wasn't there. A few weeks ago, I decided to take a walk through my old neighborhood. It's something I do from time to time when I need to clear my head, and I always find it comforting to see how little things have changed. Except this time, something had changed. Something impossible. Growing up, there was this house at the end of my street. It was huge, one of those Victorian-style homes with a wraparound porch and a turret on one side. The kind of place that seemed a little out of place in a suburban neighborhood, filled with cookie-cutter ranch houses. My friends and I used to make up stories about it, calling it haunted because it was so old and out of the ordinary, but really it was just an ordinary house. And the family who lived there moved out years ago. The last time I'd walked by, it was empty but still standing. This time though, the house wasn't there. I mean, not like it had been torn down or remodeled. There was just an empty lot. The grass was overgrown and there were no signs that anything had ever been built there. No foundation, no driveway, nothing. At first I thought I'd somehow gotten turned around, but I hadn't. The other houses on the street were exactly as I remembered. The mailbox with the quirky painted sunflowers was still next door. The big oak tree that my friend and I used to climb was in the yard across the street. Everything else was where it should be, except for that house. I stood there for a while, staring at the lot, trying to make sense of it. I even pulled up Google Maps on my phone, thinking maybe I could find an old satellite image of the house. But when I zoomed in, it showed the lot as it was now. Empty. No house. No sign there had ever been a house. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, so I called my mom. She lived in the same house I grew up in, just a few streets away. When I asked her about the Victorian house at the end of the street, she sounded confused. "What house?" she said. "There's never been a house there." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her about all the times my friends and I played in the yard, how we used to make up ghost stories about it. She laughed and said, "You must be mixing it up with somewhere else. That lot's always been empty, as far as I know." I've been obsessing over it ever since. I've looked up old property records, talked to a couple of neighbors who've lived there longer than I have, and even searched through family photo albums, hoping to find some proof. But there's nothing. It's like the house never existed. I know it was real. I remember it vividly. I can picture the chipped white paint on the shutters, the creak of the porch steps. How does something like that just vanish? I've heard of glitches in the Matrix, but this feels personal, like reality decided to rewrite itself just to mess with me. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel, like it, and don't forget to leave a comment. See you in the next video. Good luck!